Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about Google because Google is tweaking their search results to direct users to trusted sources, and I'm sure this won't be controversial at all. Now here's what's going on. This is coming from Engadget, and I thought this was interesting, and I think you need to know this. Now here's what's going on. Google is rolling out some updates for both search and news that it hopes is going to reduce the spread of misinformation. Since last June, Google has applied labels to results for quote-unquote rapidly evolving topics, which include things like breaking news, viral videos, all those kinds of things that basically go viral, spread quickly. Now, it may suggest checking back later for more details as they become clearer, and starting in the US, basically yesterday, the labels will include some information, basically, and literacy tips. Now, the idea here is to help people assess whether the information they see about a rapidly evolving topic is actually legitimate. It will basically suggest actions such as checking the publication date and searching the author's name to find out if that author is indeed credible, obviously on what they're writing on. Now, in Google News specifically, there will be a new label in top stories to indicate sources that have been widely cited by other news organizations, obviously giving that a bit more legitimacy than, like Jim's random page where he's talking about things that some people might consider news. Now, it may be basically applied to things like a news story from local newspapers, an interview, an investigative feature, an announcement, or even a press release that other publishers are linking to. Google says it's interested in using the label to highlight originating reporting as well, meaning if you're the first one to break the story and you're widely being linked, now they can start tracking back to the source so you can actually see the source that everybody else is citing. Is that source legitimate? Hopefully it is. Now, again, the aim here is to actually help users find more relevant and helpful information. Now, the labeling system will initially be available basically on mobile in the United States, again, right now only in English, and Google plans to roll this out worldwide in the coming weeks. And to quote the author of this Engadget story, and I quote, "Taking information at face value is rarely the wisest approach, so it's good to see Google encouraging users to dig a little deeper." Now, I think there's a lot of truth into that in the sense that we have seen some massive disinformation campaigns that turn into misinformation, meaning somebody or a foreign agency or whoever is willingly putting out information knowingly that is incorrect to essentially create hyperbole, to create division, and well-meaning people who are reading this that have confirmation bias towards, let's say, the point of that disinformation will take it and spread it not knowing it's disinformation. We need to check our sources. When I am writing articles for the various publishers that I've written for, such as currently Forbes and Smerconish of CNN Sirius XM, I have to go through editors that are going to be checking my sources to make sure that I am not using like Jim's random thoughts and opinion page as fact as I am laying basically my case out in what I write. This is a very important process. And a lot of people simply don't basically look at this. Now, I understand we live in political times. We are essentially very divided here, especially in the United States. I like to say that cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, but we're not immune from it. And obviously, this story really doesn't have much to do with cybersecurity, though I consider disinformation and misinformation part of the cyber warfare aspect side of things, as I know many do. But it's important to really understand that we all, in some way, shape, or form, have biases, whether they're political or something else. And by virtue of that, we tend to gravitate towards news articles or what we think are news articles that really reinforce what we think. Meaning, oh, I think this politician is bad. This article tells me this person is bad. Therefore, I believe this article over another article that says, well, no, it's pretty even-handed or he's good, whatever that is. And this is what we're talking about here. This is a huge thing. And there are sources now that I'm actually really gratified to see that are starting to come up, understanding the massive misinformation and disinformation campaigns that we have seen in the last 5 to 10 years or so, especially coming out of countries like Russia, targeting various countries around the world. The United States is not the only target. For the record, I've written extensively on that, but this is something I think that is very important. So one of those sources I want to share with you is very interesting, especially for US politics, and that is a website called ground.news. Ground.news. I find it to be really interesting, and here's why. When you go there, they actually have done analysis on these articles to say, oh, if you're on the left, here's what you're not being told. Here's what left websites are not reporting to you. And if you're on the right, it says, oh, here's basically what the right wing websites are not telling you, and it gives you a score. It shows basically where this information comes from, what sites, where on the political spectrum they are. Are they center? Are they left? Are they right? Et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's really interesting, especially to break out of that bubble that Google tends to put us in, which is why it's very interesting that Google is starting to do this. There are going to be people out there that are going to immediately look at Google doing this and say, aha, they are trying to censor what I believe. They're trying to censor the information that I would normally get. And my point here being is, if you really don't want that to happen, you should be reading all types of sources, especially those that you disagree with. Getting opinions that you disagree with, I think, are super, super important. I wake up every morning reading news, and I try to read it from all sides of the political spectrum and also around the globe, because I'm not just focused, obviously on US politics, as my job takes me around the world, literally. So this is a huge, huge thing I think that we have to discuss, we have to understand. But if you want to know what I'm talking about, check out ground.news and understand that you're probably going to start reading things that your filter bubbles, your search bubbles, that Google, etc., just simply isn't telling you. And I think that's a really important thing, especially in politically divided times. Understanding accurate sources, understanding those outlets that have been consistently more news reporting and less opinion, more accurate in essentially the delivery of information, I think is beyond important. Those are the sources I do my best to use when I'm doing my writing, my citing, my sources. And as you know, as I sit here and talk to you on the daily videos, podcasts, all that stuff, even on my radio show, I try to sort my cite my sources as much as I humanly can, because it's only fair to you, so you know where this information is coming from. So check out that website. I think it's really interesting, and it's a good way to understand just where your confirmation biases lie. If you are watching or listening to this, you have confirmation bias, whether it's a little or an absolute lot. It's human nature. And so let's break out of that. So while I applaud Google for doing these kinds of things, also understand that Google, essentially, just like Facebook, has been guilty of basically dividing us in the past. So, for example, if you do nothing but read Fox News, guess what? Their filter bubble is going to give you more Fox News and right-wing news than anything else. Conversely, if all you do, is read MSNBC or the Daily Kos, you're going to get that on the left. So making sure that things are accurate, making sure that we see originating sources that everybody else is quoting to understand just how accurate the news is beyond important. I do applaud Google for that, but if you really want to understand bias, go check out ground.news, which I think is the next evolution of this, something that Google is not taking that far, and it's very interesting to read. It's very interesting to see. So that is your news of the day. I think overall it's a good thing. I think we are moving towards vetting our sources and basically doing actual research as opposed to, listening to non-experts speak in an expert way, and that is one of the biggest problems we have. If you have the ability, let's say, to command an audience because you're good at speaking, if you're not an expert at something, you can still command an audience and get them to believe you. I've literally done basically a TED Talk on that. So this is a huge thing, and I think it's really important, to go through. So there you go. I think it's interesting, and that's your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at Nick AESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.